Chapter 1. On a Ship in the Ice. On a ship in the cold Arctic ice, Robert Walton's new friend began to tell the story of his life.
My name is Victor Frankenstein. My father, Alphonse, came from Geneva. He met my mother when his best friend, Beaufort, died. Beaufort left his daughter, Caroline, with no money. Where could she live? My father found her a room in his cousin Louisa's house. 2 years later, he married her. After they married, my father took her to Germany, France, and Italy. I was born in Naples, and for some time I was their only child. One day, when I was about 5, my father was away in Milan. My mother and I visited Lake Como. Near the lake, we saw the house of a poor family. The man and his wife had 5 children. 4 of these had dark hair and eyes. The 5th, a quiet young girl, had beautiful yellow hair and blue eyes. My mother always wanted a daughter and was interested in this little girl. When my mother spoke to the poor woman, she told her the girl's story. Elizabeth Lavenza, that was the girl's name, was the daughter of a German woman and a Milanese man from a good family. When she was born, her mother died, so her father left her with the family by the lake. The poor woman gave the child a bed, milk, and love, and the girl's father gave her money for that. But then the Austrians took him and put him in prison, and he died there. Now the girl had no family and no money, and things were far from easy for the poor family. My mother felt sorry and spoke to the woman. After that, Elizabeth came and lived in our house. I played with her and called her cousin. I was a year older than her, and she was more than a sister to me. After my younger brother Ernest was born, my mother and father took us all to Switzerland. We had a townhouse in Geneva, but lived mostly in a country house in Bellerive, by the lake. I went to school and made friends with one of the schoolboys. His name was Henry Clerval, and his father had a shop in Geneva. I was a happy child, This was before my life changed, before things went wrong. When I was about 13, I found and began reading a book by the old alchemist Cornelius Agrippa.
There are many better writers.
My father laughed. But I found the book interesting. And when I finished it, I read books by different alchemists. Perhaps one day I can stop death and people can live for hundreds of years, I thought. Then I can be rich and famous. My youngest brother, William, was born about that time. When I was 15, I remember a big storm on the lake one night. I saw the white lightning in the dark sky. And then, suddenly, some lightning hit a big old tree by the lake and broke it in two. A famous science teacher was at our house in Belrive at the time, and he told me all about lightning. Suddenly, the science of today was more interesting for me than books by dead alchemists. When I was 17, I finished school in Geneva, and my father told me,
Now you must go and learn at the University of Ingolstadt.
Before I could leave, Elizabeth was suddenly ill with a fever. She nearly died. But my mother sat by her bed and looked after her. After 3 days, Elizabeth was well again and could get out of bed. But my mother now had the fever badly. She called Elizabeth and me to her and spoke quietly to us.
Victor, I'm dying,
she said.
Please marry Elizabeth. I wanted to see that happy day, but my husband must see it now. And Elizabeth, please look after my young children. Now I must leave you. Perhaps we can meet again in the life after death.
Soon after that, she died. I left Elizabeth, my father, and my brothers in Geneva and went to Ingolstadt. Henry Clerval wanted to go to university there too. But his father said no. Work was more important than university for Henry's father. So I began my student life without Henry. I took cheap rooms in an old house in town when I arrived. Next day, I met 2 important university teachers, Monsieur Krempe and Monsieur Waldman. Monsieur Krempe laughed at my talk of alchemists. I didn't like him. Monsieur Waldman didn't laugh, and I liked him a lot. Through him, I began to be very interested in science. I looked carefully at lots of dead bodies. What makes life? What brings death? In the end, I found the answers to these 2 important questions. After that, in my rooms in town, I began to make a creature from parts of dead bodies. I worked day and night. My face was now white, and I was ill. I forgot my family, my friends, and my teachers for months. One November night, when there was a storm in the sky, I finished. The creature on the table before me was suddenly alive. He opened one big yellow eye and looked up at me. "Ugh!" I cried. I felt afraid and ran from the room. After some hours, I met Henry Clerval in the street. "What are you doing here, my friend?" I asked him.
"I arrived this morning. I'm a university student,"
he answered.
"My father said yes in the end. But what's the matter? Are you ill?"
"I'm tired from work," I said.
"Then let's go to your rooms at once,"
said Henry. Is the creature waiting there? I thought. But there was no creature when we arrived. I went to bed at once. I had a fever. Henry stayed and looked after me for months. When I was well again, Henry put a letter from Elizabeth into my hands. I read it with interest.
Cousin Victor, Henry tells us all about you. You're well now, and I'm happy for that. Here, your brother Ernest is now 15, and little William is 5. Your father is well, and we have a new person in the house, Justine Moritz. Her family is dead, and she now lives with us. She's a nice young woman and a good servant too. Please write soon. Elizabeth Lavenza.